So let's jump right in. The agenda, I'm going to talk about what I call the 2026 distribution landscape. So that's kind of what's going on this year in particular. We're going to talk about what your options are. I've categorized these in sort of 4 different categories. There are plenty of different ways to distribute your music, but I'm going to focus on releasing with a label, which I'm calling kind of ironically a little bit, golden ticket. We're going to talk about doing it yourself. That's the DIY distribution options that are out there. The middle ground, which is where a company like Virgin Music Group comes in. And then something slightly more modern, perhaps, something a little bit different, which is creating and building your own label collective, which is a segue into then talking with Bigboy. So we'll talk about the pros and cons of each as we go along. So first of all, a quick bit about me. I'm a label manager at Virgin Music Group. I've been working here in Norway for 5 years now. Previously, the distribution company was called Ingrooves. We became part of Virgin Music Group. I work with a bunch of different artists and labels here in Norway. I work with, for example, Distortion, Sounds Like Gold. A lot of the covers and stuff you see up on screen here, that's kind of the bulk of what we do. We pitch and we work with those artists on getting streaming, editorial support, that kind of thing. So yeah, Virgin itself, we're one of the world's leading independent distributors. But as I'll come on to explain during this, we do a lot more than just that. We have artists, in Norway and across the globe as well that we work. My main role is to help labels plan their releases, to collaborate on marketing ideas, a lot of fixing issues, to be honest with you, and pitching for support, which is kind of the fun bit, of course. So let's talk about the distribution landscape. Let's talk about what value distributors provide, what types there are, and what I think will be especially helpful is who's here in Norway for you guys to talk to. But before we kind of go any further, it would be really helpful for me, I think, to just get a quick show of hands. How many artists are here? Cool. And how many of you are releasing completely by yourself, kind of DIY? All right, a lot. How many of you are using Virgin Music Group, for example, or maybe The Orchard or others? Yeah, okay, a few. And then how many of you are signed with labels? All right, not so many, but a lot of independent distributors, which that's good because that's kind of what this is about. I challenge you to have a think about the questions up on the screen here. What are the gaps in your knowledge? What value would a partner bring in general? Not only a distribution partner, but perhaps also a label. What are the skills and services that they can provide that you don't already have covered yourself? And what's the exchange there? Cost, time, energy, for example. So I'm going to not insult your knowledge here and assume you already know quite a lot about distribution at least, but essentially a distributor takes music from A to B. The artist or label would sign up to work with a distributor. They would take your music to the DSPs. DSP is a digital service provider, so that's Spotify, Apple, Tidal, YouTube, etc. The fans stream, purchase, still people purchase music, and we would collect the revenue on your behalf and pay out the revenue. Each distributor varies in the kind of services that they offer, but most aim to be a one-stop shop, kind of to cover all those bases. There are, DIY distributors like DistroKid, for example, the CD Baby, TuneCore, and there are independent distributors, like some of the others I've mentioned already. Alongside getting your music on stores, which is the most basic level, it's offering advice, data and insights, royalties, playlist pitching, marketing support, and some have artist services that are in addition. As I said kind of with the previous slide, in my experience, it's really fun to celebrate getting big wins, playlist covers, top 50 and stuff like that, but it's a lot about setting up the products correctly, metadata management, fixing any issues as they come up. So what does a distributor look for in particular? Well, in most cases, we're looking for artists who are ready to take the step up from doing something DIY. Virgin Music Group, for example, we mostly work with labels here in Norway, but we do work with a handful of artists as well. But we want to be selective. We want to work with the projects that we kind of believe in, the ones who have a good story. But from a broader perspective, a distributor is looking for someone who's growing an engaged fan base. They're not always looking at just streaming numbers. It can also be comments on social media. It can be engagement on music videos, or even, of course, people just going to shows, going to concerts. We're looking for consistency and structure. We're looking for artists and teams who are going to drive the project, and that's super important. As well as, brand, story, that's key. I know Haley did a conversation earlier about artist economy, but from a distribution perspective, how do you make money? You get paid out by the distributor for a various number of different revenue streams. It can be from the most basic level, of course, being streams, digital sales revenue, purchasing, like I said, video monetization and monetization of shorts as well. There's something called YouTube Content ID, which essentially that's when your music is used on YouTube. We as the distributor would flag it, make sure that it's being monetized on your behalf. That's YouTube Content ID. Sometimes there's sync, licensing, other things like that. The main thing I'd consider here is that it's a kind of difficult time, right? Streaming has become a way to build an audience first and foremost, I would say. But there's a lot of other revenue streams that are perhaps more valuable. Live, merch, direct-to-fan, things like that. So as much as you can focus on building, streams and making money, it's also important to remember these key things about kind of building the audience as you go. In particular, building catalog as well. As artists, you guys are going to be releasing regularly, and that's kind of building future long-term growth. So focusing on your catalog and lifting your catalog where possible. It's not just focusing on new music, it's your historic music as well. Previously released music. So on the same lines here, I think there's a strong shift in 2026 to having and controlling your own ecosystems. A lot of people have different opinions on Spotify and the DSPs in general, and that feels like it could be a whole different conversation. But I think it's important to remember that these services might not be here forever. We've seen it before. There have been DSPs that have come and gone, social media platforms that have come and gone, and artists, perhaps they've lost their audience when those platforms have disappeared. So I'd ask you this, what if Spotify disappeared tomorrow? As important as it is and how great it is when you guys get something like New Music Friday, that's fantastic. But equally, I'd say that the search algorithms and the discovery algorithms are more valuable in the long term. Consistency and engagement is stronger than just having one viral moment. So don't build on rented land. Make sure that if you're moving between platforms or if you're moving between social media platforms, your audience moves with you. Emails, fan bases, communities, that kind of thing. So a quick 2026 reality check at the same time. I want to be upbeat and positive, of course, because there's a lot of artists and we want to be positive about the future. But in reality, as of the recent report for Luminate in 2025, over 100,000 tracks are being added to DSPs every day. That number is insane. It's so many releases coming. And that means that there's a competition for your attention. It's a diluted marketplace. It's super busy. So in addition to that, there's software and tools, in particular AI tools, that are meaning that the barrier to entry is lower. People can open their laptop and create a song in a day. They can get AI mastering and mixing and release it instantly across services. So it's super competitive. And the strategies are evolving as well. Things you guys need to do as artists are a lot more perhaps than 10, 15, 20 years ago. You know, you need to create great music. You need to take press pictures. You need to deliver everything on time, communicate with fans, create TikToks, monitor performance, don't run out of money, have a life on the side. There's a lot you guys have to do, right? So it's important that you take balance. Just the last conversation was excellent, by the way, but it's all about having that balance. Yeah, one thing kind of in common I have with these artists that I have up on screen here, maybe you figured it out already, but all of these artists had to work for a very long time before they had their breakthrough. In addition to these, it's like, yeah, there's so many others. I don't want to just name them all, but 10, 15 years in some cases, these artists had to work before they had their big break. Zara Larsson, she's got music from 10, 15 years ago that's suddenly coming up now as into the top 50 and stuff. So it's really important to remember that careers take time to build, consistency. It's not just individual moments. All right. So who are the distributors? Yeah, it's too many to list and kind of boring to list. You can Google and find all these different distributors I've got up on here if you want to. But yeah, I'd argue there's a few here in particular that are worth you guys knowing about. I'm going to toot my own horn and talk about Virgin Music Group, of course. We're owned by Universal, so we're one of the three majors who have their own distribution arm. The Orchard, they're owned by Sony, and ADA, who are owned by Warner. But I would also say that we, Virgin Music Group, operate very independently. We're separate to their operations. We do our own thing. We sign our own labels. We work with our own artists. So there's a lot of autonomy there. Alongside those, I'd mention Indigo Boom. There's Digger Distro. Playground have their own distribution service. DUR or DUR, I'm not quite sure how you say it, but Denmark Music Group. A-Loaded recently started up here in Norway. So there's a handful. There's also labels who have their own sort of distribution setups, like Janssen, for example, who Bigboy work with. So yeah, I might have missed some, but you get the idea. There's a good number here in Norway for you guys to talk to and have conversations with. In addition to those, which I'll come on to, of course, there are the DIY services, but they don't have people on the ground here in Norway. They don't have someone who can pick up the phone. So yeah, I'll just run through some quick distribution tips because I think it would be helpful for you. Firstly, pitch early. That's such a basic one, and you've probably heard it 1,000 times. But it's super important. For what we do, the sooner in advance we can do it, the better. Albums and EPs, working even further in advance. I put like the minimum kind of Spotify for artists pitching deadlines up there in the corner. That's for a single. But in reality, if we're working an album that we, really believe in and we feel like it has good momentum in multiple territories, we're working 6 months in advance sometimes, trying to deliver things as far in advance as possible. So for you guys who are trying to kind of, like I said, battle it out with all those other artists who are releasing, the earlier you can be, the better. Build momentum early on socials as well. We all have the ability to TikTok pre-release things. You can tease content. You can play your songs during shows and say, this one's coming up in the future, Make sure to get it out there beforehand. Refresh your profiles. It's really basic, but the amount of Spotify profiles that we see that don't have your Instagram link or don't have a bio or some other way to find you, it's such a basic thing, but it goes a long way. It shows that you're using all the tools, which is another point I have up there. Find your audience. Again, it might not be that audience is on Spotify. You never know. It's so, can vary genre by genre, territory by territory. It could be that your audience is on Amazon Music and you just didn't kind of know it yet or whatever. And we're so focused here in Norway on Spotify, but there's a lot of other options out there. use all the tools that are available to you. So the DSPs, they want to build stickiness, they call it, which is when you open up your phone and you press play on a song, they want you to stay there for longer than just that. They want you to scroll. They want you to look at videos. They want you to send things to your friends. They kind of want to make it almost like a social media platform in a way. So by using all the tools you have available to you, like Spotify, clips they have merch, you can add your live concerts, dates now as well. There's so many different things you can do. Apple Music for artists, it's the same. You can add all kinds of different information and things and ways to keep your fans kind of on page for longer. So use the tools. Be active in your community. Let the fans lead the way. They're the ones who are going to drive the project forward ultimately. Be consistent. Focus on a strong strategy. And yeah, it's really a cliche, this last one, to say think outside the box and break the rules. But yeah, think outside the box and break the rules, because the tools are quite rigid in a way, but if you come with an idea that can create a buzz or create some kind of marketing conversation, that can be key. I'll give a quick example. We were working on Ari Baigorra's album last summer, for example, and the label came to us and said, we want to have a part A on the album and a part B on the album, but we want to deliver the whole thing to Spotify, have the first half playable and the second half grayed out, like you couldn't play it. And that's not something that we could very easily do, but fortunately we had the team, we kind of worked it out, and it caused a conversation, it caused some buzz. Fans were saying like, hey, how come I can't play the second half of the album? Is this a mistake? And it was engaging and it created conversation. And it went #1 and all that kind of stuff. So it worked out really well. Okay, so what are my options? Let's imagine you're the artist. I mentioned those 4 things earlier here. We've got sign with a label. This could be a major or an independent label. I'm kind of bucketing things into one to move quite quickly here. You could release it independently. You could create an account, release via one of those self-service distributors. The middle ground, I've already talked about it a little bit. I'm calling it Distro Plus. We're distributors who offer additional services. We think we're that little bit better. We can offer more, and we have more leverage. This 4th option, like I said, it's a bit of a hybrid option. Could you create your own label collective? We'll come on to that in a bit. Or you could do nothing. Okay, label deal. Very big differences between major labels and independent labels. I can't describe independent label in kind of one thing because it can extend so far in different directions. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to kind of consider them all traditional label deals. You could walk out of here today, have a conversation with someone who has a label, and you could sign with them. They could distribute your music. You don't need to watch the rest of this presentation because they've got it handled. But there's a lot more to it than that. Just like distributors, the labels can vary, and the amount of support they can offer can vary. So let's just say, for example, major labels, they can offer scale. They can offer perhaps financial support. They can offer reach. But in the trade-off there, you're giving up some control, you're giving up ownership. With an independent label, kind of similarly, you've got flexibility and you've got support as well, but perhaps there's limited resources. To bring this angle kind of back to distribution, I'd say when signing with a label, it's not something that's often asked, like, who's your distribution partner? Like, artists don't necessarily think to ask that, but maybe it's worth asking, just out of interest, to say, how, as a label, do you distribute your music? I'm kind of keen to know what the team looks like. So yeah, back to my initial question. If you were offered a label deal today, what would you need that you couldn't do yourself? Each artist's situation as well, completely different. So the pros and cons, you could write a whole list of pros and cons. It could go on forever and ever, but let's just kind of generalize a little bit here. With a label, you're going to get more of a team. Perhaps there are specialists in different departments. You've got maybe people who are really good at marketing or PR, radio. You're going to have credibility that comes with being signed to that label. You know, there's a few labels out there I know, I'm sure you guys do as well, but it doesn't matter to me who the artist is. If they sign a new artist as a label, I'm like, cool, I want to check out that new music because I know that the label is credible. They've got scale, they've got reach, perhaps financial backing in some cases, and they've got influence over the industry. There's doors that they can open for you. In exchange, there's a reduced ownership. You're going to have to split the revenue. They're going to take a piece of the pie. Perhaps there's less creative control. Maybe you've got these team members who are saying, actually, no, we don't want to go with this single first. We want to go with this single first. And that finance that I mentioned, most of the time it has to be recouped. It's recoupable. If you get an advance, it's not free money. You have to pay that back. There's layers of approval. There's hoops you have to jump through. And ultimately, you might not necessarily be the priority that you think you are. It's important to consider maybe you're not ready for a label. Maybe not everyone fits into that mold. You would save quite a lot of time, I think, if you considered that and thought about, which goals you want to chase first. And maybe that means that you need to release kind of yourself first, DIY, right? There's a lot of self-service distribution platforms out there. There's a handful of them here on screen. DistroKid, it's very popular, very common. TuneCore, CD Baby, Amuse, Sounddrop, Ditto. Again, they all kind of vary. I'm not sure all of these I would exactly say that they are completely DIY. Maybe they have team members who lean in on certain things, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure with all of these ones, anyone can sign up. And that's kind of where I'm making the differentiation here. So, yeah. What are the pros of working with a self-service distributor? You open your laptop, you sign up today. You've got ownership. You've got control. You can release pretty quickly. You could get things up on Spotify in a day or two if you wanted to. I'd hope you have access to data, and there's the transparency that comes with that. You're in charge. And like I said, it's available to all. There's no one stopping you. Equally, on the other hand, maybe the tools are slightly limited. Very likely there's no funding, and the responsibility is all on you. It's all on your shoulders. In the case of these DIY distributors, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's no one here locally. A lot of the time, if there are kind of human beings, they're in different markets. Feels like a lot of them have kind of chatbot type responses instead of being able to pick up the phone. And don't get me wrong, if you're fine with that, you're fine with that. But I feel like there's a lot of value in being able to talk to someone quickly. There's no guarantees with pitching as well. They are not necessarily going to have the same level of relationships that a label or a local distributor will have with the DSPs. They're not going to know who the Norwegian editor at Spotify is, for example. Or if they do, I don't know that they have as much weight in the conversation. Equally, I would say that lack of support and kind of lack of protection go together. You guys should be very aware of this coming into, in the future, 2026 onwards. For example, let's say there's an issue with your release, like it's on the wrong artist profile or, something similar to that. I know a self-service distributor, it could take them quite a while to get that type of thing fixed, whereas I'm confident in saying that I'd be able to fix that very quickly. In addition, when it comes to lack of protection, some of these DIY services, they don't take the time necessarily to quality control, to check things like AI music, for example. I've seen tons of fake music popping up all across DSPs. Sometimes they leverage even using artists who are famous in order to grab a bunch of streams quickly. And then by the time it gets taken down, it's a little bit late. So, yeah, it's a little bit of the Wild West at times. It's important to be aware of that, I'd say. Let's see. I'm not going to take too much time to talk about this because you guys can Google, you can search, but a quick kind of analysis. This is maybe what I would do if I were an artist. I'd look at, okay, all of these DIY platforms, they're open for me to sign up to. How's the customer service? What's the subscription model? Is it like a one-time fee? Is it a yearly fee? Do I pay per release? Is there a distro fee perhaps in addition to that, In the case of CD Baby there, for example, it's a 9% distribution fee in addition to a one-time fee when you use a single or an album. And the speed to DSPs, like how quickly can you get your stuff up there? This all comes from Ari's take, by the way, which is a great source for you guys to look at if you have more time. I'd say also consider the fact that if you're a dance and electronic musician, for example, there are dance and electronic specific DSPs, and you want to make sure your music goes there. So you need to work with a distributor or a label who knows that you're going to be able to put music there. If you're looking to break in China, for example, there are Chinese specific DSPs, and not all distributors send to all those DSPs. So yeah, do your research, check. Can be genre specific things to be aware of. So middle ground, I get to talk about Virgin, which is good because I know about that. So I'd say we're kind of the curated distribution, boutique, maybe that's another word, custom service options, all those kind of things. As I said earlier, we're mostly working with labels, but we do globally, especially work with a lot of artists as well. I feel like if you're to do a comparison, we'd have stronger relationships with the DSPs than the DIY. And I'd say it's a partnership rather than just buying a service. I named a few earlier, but I'd also say, you could include Fugger on this list. You could include Believe Digital. You could include AWOL. There's a lot of these kind of similar ones to Virgin, The Orchard, ADA. Yeah, I also think that we have unique kind of, Virgin in particular, I know that one of our biggest strengths is our international team. We communicate internationally. If we have releases that have international appeal, let's say you're making music that could appeal in Brazil. I'm just going to talk to my Brazilian colleague. We're going to pass along the information. Obviously, there has to be some momentum and all these things I'm talking about, but we have colleagues in every major market around the world, and we're going to be able to communicate things on an international scale. The relationships are important as well. It's a relationship that we would have with you. We'd partner with you. And if you're excited about it, ultimately you're pitching it to us, and we got to get excited about it as well. But our ears are there. We're human beings. You can talk to a person about it. And hopefully from that, the difference would be that if you're working with a DIY distributor, they would say like, yes, your release is live. We'd be able to say, yes, your release has been worked. So there's pros and cons, of course, as well. We're still independent, but you'd have a team behind you. I've talked about this already, local contacts in Norway, human support. There's possibility of funding if the right label or artist approaches us and, we believe in it and we believe that giving financial backing will help raise the project. That's something we do as well. Amplified editorial pitching. We're going to take your project, pitch it as best we can, and we know we have the contacts and the connections to do that. I've talked about additional services, strategic guidance, and the global infrastructure, but there are, of course, cons. It's invite only. We'd have to have a conversation. There'd have to be an agreement. It can't just be that you sign up to use Virgin Music, for example, today. There's a reduced ownership as well. We work from distribution fees. We take a piece of the pie. Often, there's longer-term contracts. I'm pretty sure you sign up for one of these DIY services, you put your music out, you're not happy, a week or two or a month or whatever later, cancel it, take it down, whatever. With us, there's going to be a slight commitment to the project. It might be that it's a year, might be 3 years, might be 5 years, depends. And it can be performance-based as well. Ultimately, if we agree a contract with you and you're not hitting those markers or those kind of performance-based metrics that we've agreed on, it can be that, the deal ends. I'm going to move really quickly because I'm conscious of the time, but a quick scenario here. Let's imagine you did 10,000 streams in a year as a small artist, which if you see in the top right-hand corner, again, from the 2025 end-of-year Luminate report, unfortunately, 88% of tracks on Spotify streamed less than 1,000 streams. That means they weren't monetized. So it is a real possibility that you release a track and it does 10,000 streams. So consider that, let's say, for example, you had a $20 annual fee to use a DIY distributor, but with a distribution plus service, you had a 20% distribution fee. Quick comparison there. One with the DIY, you'd end up with $20, and with the Distro Plus, $32. In this case, the Distro Plus would win. let's say you did really well and did 100,000 streams, which all props to you. If you did 100,000 streams, that's fantastic in this day and age. 100,000 streams where you only get $20 taken away from you, you're going to end up more using the DIY service. But I would argue doing 100,000 streams all by yourself on a DIY service, that's tough going. 100,000 streams with a team, with support, feels more likely. So let's spread that out quickly across 5 years instead. If you did 5 years, you're going to take that $20 fee, 5 years, $100. With us, 20% fee, for example. I say us, I mean Distro Plus in general. Maybe that comes out on top. So consider that a percentage over time might be cheaper than the annual fee. As well as that, I would argue that with a DIY distributor, it's a one-off payment or it's a subscription model. They don't really have an incentive to come back to you after you've released your music. You put your music out there, they've got your money. That's it, really. Whereas on the other side, if you had a percentage deal, there's a strong incentive to come back and check how your catalog is performing. We, for example, have a tool that sends an email to you if we find that a track within your catalog is taking off, if it's doing well. We're going to keep an eye on it with you, and we're going to give you recommendations on how you can maximize, capitalize on that momentum. Cool. Then this fourth option, I'm sort of going to be talking about like a little bit of a hybrid thing here. So, and we're seeing it more and more. Bigboy is a great example of this as a company who have been a management company, but then are beginning to release some of their own artists sort of as a label at the same time. I'd argue there's a lot of value in grouping skills and experience together, especially if you're artists who have the drive and the passion, right? Grouping together can mean better deals with distributors, for example. If you come in as a group of artists and you're releasing a broader range of products or more products in general, you're probably going to get a better deal out of it. You've got control over the direction and you can learn as you go. So just before we move on to Bigboy quickly, a few kind of pros and cons there. Like I say, I'd argue you have control, you have ownership. Sharing knowledge, that's a real plus. And there's a shared risk, which kind of goes on both sides, to be honest, but you're sharing the journey, you're sharing the burden kind of together. You can decide on the direction, the cultural identity, and you have speed and flexibility. I would also say perhaps there's limited scale. If you're just 2 or 3 people working and you're trying to sign 100 artists, there's no way that's going to work. Maybe there's leadership disputes or maybe unequal contribution happening. Maybe there's, the time, bandwidth, like I said, accountability as well. You have to all kind of shoulder the burden. So I think that brings me on really nicely to invite Veslemøy up on stage so that we can talk a little bit more about Bigboy. I don't know, is a clap appropriate? I think it is. Yeah.
Ja.
Is that working? Nice.
Yes.
All right, cool. I'm not blanking you on my phone. I'm just looking up my questions for you.
So, terrible start.
Please tell us a little bit more about Bigboy management.
Well, my name is Veslemøy. I'm the daily manager, daglig leder of Bigboy. We started in 2024, so we're still young, I think. We started as a management, but I think we're becoming more and more of like a music company because we do both management, booking, and now label also. And we have different deals for our different artists. We work with artists such as Bendik, who also own Bigboy, and most likely Marlon, who's talking afterwards, and Fie, Sophio, Goofy Geese, so on. And then we have some artists such as Egentlig, who we book for but do not manage, in addition to Andy Louis. And then we release Sophio and Bendik's music.
Yep. Yeah. So those are the two in particular that, in reference to my conversation about kind of hybrid model, those are the two that you're releasing and focusing on kind of as a label-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. So when did you make the decision to work on releasing your artist's music, not just managing them?
Actually, quite early on. Because when we started talking about making Bigboy, Silje, or Bendik, her label deal was like expiring, and she wanted to own her own music. So that's like wanting to release it herself was more of like ownership to her own craft after, several experiences, both good and bad, with different labels. So we own her first album, and then we have released her last EP and her album. But then we weren't supposed to release any other music because it's easy to like become a label and release some music if it's your own. But it's it's more brave to be like, we haven't done this before, give us your music to every artist in Norway. We wouldn't do that. So it's easier to like fail with your own craft, I think.
But also in a way you're sort of taking care of it in the meantime, perhaps. Yeah.
And also like with Bendik, she's established. She's in Norway. It's not very international because it's Norwegian music. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier than building something from the start.
Sure. And with Sophie?
It's not the same of like wanting to keep control of like the ownership of the music, but it's more of, because we had Bigboy, we didn't see a natural fit in Norway of like a label we wanted to sign with. We wanted to be international, and we don't want to hurry. So then we had like room, or we had space to like to wait and to build Sophie O as an artist, and then have it released on Bigboy in the meantime while finding the perfect fit maybe abroad. So our goal is to find someone who can release the next album abroad and then do Scandinavia ourselves.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So with the artists that you have on management, but you work with different labels, you kind of, in a way, get to see both sides, right? And do you ever look at it and think, I could do this better myself?
Well, I think, not to be cynical, but we're not stealing ideas, but I feel like it's a very lucky position to get to see like how other Norwegian labels work there. They have more experience than us. We don't come from like other labels and then start a Bigboy. I'm a psychologist. They're artists. We haven't done it before, except from Malin, who's worked a bit in a label. But to get to see like, oh, they pitch as far as like 6 months in advance or whatever. They prioritize this and this. So I feel like we get to see very close hand how, and learn from people we trust. Yeah. And then, of course, we see like the good and the bad, what we want to do, and what we want to do differently.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about your distribution in particular.
Yeah.
How did you decide on a distribution partner? What things were you looking for in particular? Were you looking for local support, I'm sure, speed, international, you mentioned already with Sophie, playlist support ultimately as well?
First of all, we're like a sub-label of Jansen Records, who release, or they use The Orchard as a distributor partner. So they sort of administer our label, but we do all our promo ourselves. So we're sort of in like a label group with them. It's mixed, I think, is the best answer. I feel like when we were looking, we were too small for certain distributors, and certain distributors were too big for us. So, for example, we were talking to Fuga, who's very big and great and competent and everything, but we know that we would be like a small fish in a very big pond. And also, we didn't necessarily feel like they understood our ambition and our like who we were. Sure. And we said like, we're indie, and they're like, yeah, you're indie, you're gonna sign Astrid S in like a year. No. Yeah. So we met Jansen, who we work with on label with Fie and Goofy Geese. we trust them. We felt like they understood our vision, but they also had like reach in terms of like the orchard. The binding time, it wasn't long. It's good economy. Like it made sense. But yeah, the local support and knowing that I could like call Erik Jansen if I was wondering about something.
Sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And to know that we're a priority because they don't have 7,000 labels.
Sure. Yeah.
But their own. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So when we first met, I was quite impressed, I think, by the conversation we had about you guys starting your own thing, kind of, I guess, taking the bull by the horns or whatever. We talked in particular about, like, I think you guys said you had a photo shoot to do, but you had to do press pictures for a project, but you had not done press pictures in that way before, and you were just like, we're going to just do it. We'll figure it out along the way. That stood out to me. So, like, tell me a little bit about, I guess, how you guys handle delegating skills, the tasks, like.
I mean, I think it's like take 4 girls in a room and they think that they can DIY anything. Then you will get Bigboy. No, but it was in the beginning, me and my partner Thea, who's there somewhere, we knew that we had a label night on Rockefeller, and we couldn't pay for a photographer. So then we said, okay, then we'll have to take the pictures of ourselves, but they can't suck because then it will be sucky pictures. And then it was the same with like press pictures. We didn't have too much money for that, so we were like, okay, then we'll have to rent Studio Metro, and then we'll have to learn how to take press pictures. The first weren't too good. Now they're better.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's sort of a Pippi attitude. That's like, we can learn a lot of things. We can make our own website, and then we also have to be very like humble of like what we can't do, like what we want to learn from other people. So we've been very like, wanting to learn from the people who are experienced where we aren't, but also think that we can be ambitious and just have inspiration.
Sure. Yeah. I guess brings me on to my next point, which is then, what do you have to outsource still? Do you find there's a lot of things that you guys don't have covered and therefore you have to rely on other people?
Yeah. It's first of all, we work because we don't want to be like economically Bigboy. We don't work with 2 like big commercial artists, and we feel like it's good to have like a stable foundation, so we work on the side, which also leads us to be like, we can be flexible and take a risk together with our artists to take a smaller cut if it makes sense, because it's a smart concert to play, for example, to create more concert opportunities. But it's easier to promote in Norway, Norwegian music, because New Music Friday, there are many other people who want New Music Friday. I mean, not Norway. So promoting in the US, in Germany, wherever, which is like hard with the Sophie. But with Silje, Norwegian music in Norway, she's established, it's much easier. So international booking, international promotion.
Sure.
I think it's the hardest to do ourselves.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
How do your artists feel about you guys doing both the management and the label side?
Good, I hope.
Yeah.
No, I feel like the key is to be very like transparent in like, this we can provide, but we haven't done it before, so we will have to do X, Y, Z. But then we can't promise anything that we haven't done. We can promise results, for example. But I feel like as long as the communication is quite transparent, then I feel like everyone is quite happy, and I think they see the amount of work we put into our label and our management.
Yeah, totally.
So I think happy.
I should hope so. That's great. It's kind of a broad one again, but how would you say that you measure success? Like, what are the goals for Bigboy in the coming years? Or
I think
maybe those are 2 different things.
yeah, no, but reaching your goals is a success, of course. I think that from the start, we've been very like clear that we want to make something that just doesn't last like a year, that we get tired of it, and then we're like, we'll sign on to someone else. So making something that lasts, I feel like is our goal and would be successful. Of course, it's a like objective parameters that's like 1 bazillion streams would be a success. But also like just developing, learning, being recognized by people who know what they're doing, like being asked by someone who knows.
Credibility.
I feel like that says something that we have like managed to land something and done something good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, learning, developing, insane fame.
Sure. Aim high. Okay, last one, I think, before we maybe open it up to the floor. But if you were starting again today, would you do it all over again? Would you do it the same way? Would you do anything different? Let's say you have like no network, no team, or whatever. You choose the same choice of building this kind of collective.
I think so, because of course, like there would be upsides to like if we didn't have like our jobs, so we could do Bigboy full time. Of course, we would have to make more money, so we would maybe get other results. I don't know, but I feel like I think we would do it again the same way, and we've been very eager to like just learn from the people around us, which I think is very good. And also just a shout out to Katapult, Musikkontoret, who we were there from the start, which was very good. So we had a mentoring program.
Which year was that?
Last year, I think.
2 years.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think the most important thing that we've done is like we've been knocking on every door. So we knew that we wouldn't get AI International the first year because we were like 2 months old. So I texted them the day before saying, I guess someone is ill. Can I join you? Someone was ill.
That's a great shout. Yeah.
I got to join them. And then I got to join the management program afterwards. So I think like just doing that again, for sure.
Fantastic, yeah. Cool. All right, I think then we'll open the floor up if there were any questions either to myself or Veslemøy with regards to, Bigboy or distribution. Any questions? I think overall in the business, not just distributors, labels as well, the money and the budgets, everything's tight, right? And so the time and money and energy, like those things I talked about, that even the labels and distributors want to put into a project, A&Ring essentially, is dying a little bit. It's to the point where the major labels, they don't want to take a chance. They want something that's already successful before they invest in it. They don't want to take the risk. So to your point, you guys as artists as a whole are left kind of a little bit to your own devices to develop your projects before someone else is willing to take the risk to lean in on it. Equally, I would say there's artists that we've signed and artists that you've taken a chance on as well, where we've heard the album day one, they don't have any profiles, they don't have anything, and we've gone, this is fantastic, we really want to work with this. So I'd argue keep creating, keep working on your music, create something you're really proud of, and when you're ready to send it to labels, distributors, do it yourself. It should be at the point where you feel confident in what it is there. I don't know, Veslemøy, do you have anything else to add there?
No, egentlig enig.
Okay.
Vi har gjort veldig mye selv, bare. Hvis vi har sett sånn, nå må vi få flere følgere, da må vi lage masse videoer. Og så har vi ikke budsjettet, da lager vi det selv.
Yeah.
Thank you. Takk.
Sure. Yeah. I think we're done, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Tusen takk til Zak og Veslemøy. Nå programmet ferdig her.